This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Deloitte. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, some workforce intelligence from OPM on using artificial intelligence, sustaining the federal workforce for AI and beyond, and the zero trust revolution is on at HHS. Chief Information Security Officer Lamont Yarbrough is here. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. Federal agencies have new guidance from the Office of Personnel Management on using generative artificial intelligence responsibly. The guidance includes 9 general recommendations for employees and use case examples with specific recommendations. Rob Shriver is the new acting director of OPM. Rob, welcome. First of all, congratulations on taking that position, stepping in for Ms. Ahuja, who is stepping down. Regarding this AI work that you're doing, not just the information that I referenced a moment ago, but a lot more that you and your colleagues are doing on AI. Why is that so important to what OPM's doing now, Rob?
Well, thanks, Francis, and it's great to be here. And I'm happy to talk about AI because everybody's talking about AI right now. You know, it can do everything from streamlining code to deep faking Keanu Reeves on TikTok. And so the technology is both amazing and frightening. And at OPM, what we're committed to doing is make sure that federal agencies have the talent that they need to be able to harness it. So we've actually taken 11 separate actions under President Biden's executive order on AI. They've ranged from providing hiring flexibilities, reminding agencies of what they can do to be more competitive on pay, to the generative AI guidance that you mentioned. All of it is part of a broader theme at OPM, where what we're trying to do is be the strategic human capital advisor for government that not only sets policy, but supports agencies in the logistics of all of this.
When you're creating those resources for agencies, how much of that dialogue is two-way or 20-some way, I guess, if you consider all the members of the Chico Council, and how much of it is OPM generating what it knows agencies need to do from a policy, from a legal privacy perspective, that kind of thing?
Sure. So it's a little bit of both, Francis. The executive order itself identifies specific actions that we need to take. It's in figuring out how to meet those requirements that we have engaged broadly with the Chico community. There's also an AI and tech talent task force that we are a co-chair of. We had already been engaged in a whole tech-to-gov initiative prior to generative AI exploding onto the scene. So we've been able to leverage those vehicles, those collaboration vehicles, to make sure that what we were putting together had that input from the folks on the ground that are actually going to have to implement it.
As I read what you're doing on artificial intelligence, it sounded similar, not in language necessarily, but in intent, to a lot of the broader work that you've done on strengthening the workforce that fits with the President's management agenda. Is that a fair read on my part? Is that what you were going for as you're creating these resources?
Yes, absolutely, Francis. We've been doing this work really from the beginning of the administration. What we've built on here with respect to the AI talent surge is how we supported the agencies that needed to staff up to implement the bipartisan infrastructure law. So, for example, before that law was even passed, we brought the key agencies together, talked about their hiring needs, and then we joined together to recruit HR staff because we knew they were going to need to staff up. So we did a multi-agency hiring action. We hired a whole bunch of HR folks that went out into those 6 agencies that were really at the core of Bill. And then we were able to meet our goals of hiring almost 6,000 federal employees. So what we're doing for AI builds on that bipartisan infrastructure experience.
What's your sense of the progress that agencies are making at working with each other on those multi-agency hiring type things with candidate pools and all of those kinds of things? Because that's been something that agencies have struggled with for probably as long as I've been watching OPM.
You're right, Francis, and it just makes sense, right? Like, rather than have an applicant have to apply for a contract specialist job individually at GSA or at OPM or the Defense Department, doesn't it just make sense to bring all of those agencies together, have one announcement, have everybody apply, assess that talent, and then have every agency be able to hire from that same hiring certificate? It just makes sense. And so we have been piloting a number of different pooled hiring actions. Most recently, we did a data scientist action, which of course is critical to the AI work of the federal government. And so we're seeing more and more success both with government-wide hiring actions like this, and then also if there's an agency that maybe is really good at recruiting and assessing a certain kind of job, they can do a multi-agency hiring action themselves, and we're seeing more of those happen every day too.
Another topic that I know that you're working on, thinking about at OPM, and that the broader federal community is concerned about, is the potential return of Schedule F. Tell me about the work that you're doing in that respect. A big announcement recently that I'd like you to recap, but more broadly, how you're working with agencies to try to help them prepare in case something like that were to happen again.
Yeah, so we finalized a regulation back in April on civil service protections. And Francis, the regulation does three key things. First, it says that if you are a federal employee and you've obtained protections, due process protections, then those can't be taken away through a technical HR action like Schedule F was. Second, Schedule F relied on this exception, long-standing exception to the federal rules for positions that are confidential policy-making, policy advocating, and they tried to apply that to career feds. Our rule says that actually that phrase has always meant like the very small number of political appointees in agencies, and so we clarified that. And then the third thing that we did is set up kind of a fail-safe process that if in the future a Fed is subjected to something like Schedule F, they have the ability to file an appeal with the Merit System Protection Board. That's a new right.
I note over the last couple of years that you've been deputy director, that you've been really tightly integrated with the director on implementing and executing on a lot of the things that we've already talked about in this conversation. What's the process look like from your perspective of kind of rebooting OPM and bringing it back to being not just, as you described it a few moments ago, not just a policy-making organization, but a resource provision, almost a bandwidth provision for the Chico shops across the federal government? How have you seen that evolution take place, Rob?
Yeah, I think that's really important for OPM and for the federal government. And early on in my tenure back at OPM, and right before Director Ahuja came on board, NAPA issued a report on OPM. And we read that report and took it seriously and incorporated many of the recommendations into our strategic plan. And so some of the key things that we've done to change OPM's approach is, number one, delegate some low-risk transactional activities to agencies so that, number two, we can serve more as that strategic human capital advisor, not be so focused on just what our statutory responsibilities are, but there are a lot of really smart people at OPM that understand HR and the federal government, and we want to make those folks that expertise available to all the agencies and take on more of these proactive projects like what we did with bipartisan infrastructure law and what we're doing now with AI.
One of the things that Chicos tell me on an ongoing basis now is we're getting better and more and better data from OPM about our workforces and about the broader federal workforce than we have before. What are some of the other key things that you think are important for OPM to do and be to be that strategic partner to the agencies, the White House, and so on?
Wow, I think the data is right on point. We have such rich data at OPM. HR data on 2.3 million federal workers. Obviously, we have a responsibility to use that data securely and protect privacy, but we are already seeing huge benefits of being able to produce dashboards for agencies that look at, for example, attrition, or that get their federal employee viewpoint survey results more quickly to them so that they can then take action to address the issues that arose in those surveys. They have more time to address those before the next iteration of it. And I think more and more data that we're able to put in this easy to use dashboard format, because agencies, like, they know the data for their own workforce, but we have the government-wide data that can put all of that into context.
We have about 30 seconds left. You stole my last question, which is, do you expect having better access to better data and more data to help you deliver speed to some of those agencies that ask for it?
Absolutely. I think it's critical. I think it is a critical function that only OPM can provide, and having a strong central HR agency that is a source of accurate, comprehensive human capital data for the federal government is critical.
Rob, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Francis.
You can read more about OPM's work on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, sustaining the federal workforce for AI and beyond. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Dive deep into the latest advancements in maritime technology and defense. Watch Innovation in Government from Sea Air Space, available now on demand. You'll get exclusive insights from leaders at the Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard as they discuss breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and digital innovations. Don't miss this unique perspective on the future of maritime defense and technology. Watch anytime you want on the FedGov Today YouTube channel and at fedgovtoday.com, sponsored by Carasoft. Welcome back. OPM and the General Services Administration both offer agencies resources for environmental sustainability. Some federal leaders are starting to call their approaches to their workforces human sustainability. Kristine Korva is Human Capital Offering Portfolio Leader for Deloitte. Kristine, welcome. It's great to see you. How do you define that term, human sustainability, regarding a workforce in the public sector?
Yes, it's really simple. When you think about an organization, people are the most important part, and if they're thriving, your organization is thriving. So when you think about human sustainability, the more you can actually invest in your people, whether it's their well-being, their mental and physical fitness, their skills, their employability, human sustainability is a piece of cake.
Is applying that concept different in a public sector environment where you might be limited as to what you can invest in those employees compared to a private sector organization that can make its own decisions about how it does such?
Sure. We're actually, part of our study, we talked to over 14,000 professionals, both in public and private sector. Universally, we see the same challenges. So the interventions are very similar, the ability for leaders to influence is very similar, the needs of the workforce are very, very similar.
What are the things that you see organizations either in public sector or private sector doing that the other people could learn from?
Sure. Well, there's lots of things. When you think about technology disruption, right? AI is a hot topic right now. We want people to use their imagination. We want people to be comfortable. So employing the ability to give people space to play, we call that a digital playground. We also love the idea of people thinking about how to modernize not only the talent experience, but some of the cultural environments to support people's use of their imagination and ability to not be afraid of changing technologies.
So it sounds like a hearty endorsement, intentionally or unintentionally, for what Rob and I just talked about the work that they're doing on AI,
That's
providing
right.
both broad best practices and recommendations and specific use case type recommendations. If you want to do this, this is a good way to do this, and so on.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. What's the extent of that provides value to organizations? How much detail can one get into before one is micromanaging rather than providing good high-level guidance?
Sure. So one thing we think about from a leadership standpoint is allowing, again, some freedom for people to explore. The other thing we think about is putting some parameters in place relative to the skills people may need for some of the changing work. The other thing we think about is transparency and trust around the data. So when you think about bringing people together to evaluate them, how they're doing, as well as the impact that they're having, giving them insight into the types of data that you'll collect, how you'll use it, and the impact it may have on them personally from a career standpoint is really important to building trust within that professional environment.
You talked about managers and leaders and the challenges they're telling you about. What are the employees telling you about the experiences they're having? This is a huge point of emphasis for the administration, the President's management agenda, what the employee experience looks like.
Yes, for sure. And as I said earlier, when people are thriving, organizations are thriving. And so, you know, a big part of our trends this year is all around human performance. And so again, when you think about the things that the workforce needs, again, whether that's a skill standpoint, the environment from a talent experience standpoint, the culture, some of the investments that we're making or an organization is making in them, it's critically important for their experience as well as that open and transparent communication.
We have about 30 seconds left. Based on what you've seen from dealing with your clients in the public sector, what can they do, what should they do or do more of in order to provide that experience you just described?
A few things, I think. One, certainly embrace change, embrace the technology, but also do not forget about the human elements that are really important to people. Empathy, innovation, creativity, really important for organizations to support that environment overall. The other thing I would say is, again, transparency and trust. Bring your employees into the process to help allow them to understand where the organization is headed.
This is the worst possible question to ask at the end of a conversation like this, but how does someone build trust in organizations where maybe that has not been a hallmark in the past?
Yeah, I mean, it starts at the top. I think when you bring people in and help them shape a direction, a strategy, an initiative, you get that buy-in from the ground up.
Kristine, it's great to have you on the program.
Thanks so much
for your time today. You can read more about the ideas Kristine talked about on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the Zero Trust Revolution's on at HHS. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Here's healthcare strategist Tim Boltz from Innovation in Government at HIMSS, presented by Carasoft.
It's not far out, at least from a healthcare perspective, that our providers of care are going to be able to provide better treatments based on the power of AI and ML, right? The computational power of delivering new treatments, new drugs, new protocols to treat cancer, and also autoimmune diseases that have sort of been on the fringe, right? That aren't mainstream. It's only a small percentage of the population that has these rare diseases. AI ML allows us to pour resources into treatment for those things that maybe haven't been done before, which will provide better care for all of us.
For more, go to innovationingov.com. Welcome back. The Department of Health and Human Services is focused on mitigating 10 potential challenges on its zero trust journey. Some of those challenges are related to infrastructure like legacy systems. Some are focused on workforce issues like change management and user experience. Lamont Yarbrough is Chief Information Security Officer at HHS. Lamont, welcome. It's great to see you again.
Thanks,
how are you dealing with these challenges, and how are you trying to put them aside to get to where you want to be as an agency and as a big organization in HHS? Welcome.
Thanks you again for being here. Well, we're not putting them to the side. We're taking them head on, right? We have to appreciate where we are so we can define where we're going. So as challenges present themselves, we discern what we need to do to overcome those challenges so that we can move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
The zero trust journey that you're on, where would you say you are on that spectrum, and how do you measure where you're going and what you're getting done?
My opinion about where we are may change on any given day, and is informed by a series of information that I receive from the team, right? But I guess I should state from an HHS perspective, we're a large federated agency, right? So the view that I have with respect to how we are addressing, our zero trust journey is informed by how each operational division within the agency is doing. So we coordinate and collaborate and get together to try to discern where each of us are, try to learn from scar tissue that any of them have, had experienced, so that can help inform us on how we move forward.
How do you, what kind of challenges does that federated situation structure present, and how do you deal with those kinds of challenges, Lamont?
Right, so we know within the zero trust paradigm, from the CISA perspective, appreciating that there are two, the CISA and the DOD, the 5 respective pillars. You try to discern from an operational perspective on your level of maturity within each of those 5 pillars, and so that you can identify the path forward. Now, of course, moving forward and smartly is predicated on your resources, right? You might have the talent in-house to move forward, but perhaps you don't, or perhaps you just need, certain contracting support, be it from, technical talent. Perhaps you need tools. So from that perspective, we try to identify what those needs are so that we can programmatically move about trying to get those resources.
The now former CISO at DHS, Ken Bible, was on the show over the summer talking about the same kind of situation where he's got to federate, he's got all the components of DHS, and he works with the CISOs of those individual organizations. What does that structure look like inside HHS? HHS. Who are your point people in each of the bureaus and other pieces of HHS to be able to keep that information flow going?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm the CISO for the agency from an enterprise perspective. But within each operational division, from FDA to CMS and others, each of those entities has a CISO representing them as well. We have a body that we call the CISO Council, by which we talk about, the needs of the day to include zero trust. And within those respective teams, they have their own talent, and that talent comes together with my team as well. And we formed a collaborative, if you will, a zero trust working group, where we can come together, again, identify scar tissue, identify where we are so that we can define where we're going. So that's an ongoing thing.
You don't have to attribute them to particular parts of HHS, but what are some of the scars that you've seen that organizations have shared to try to help their colleagues in other organizations avoid?
Of course. Again, being a large organization and being within the federal government, sometimes the resources are austere, right? So we can kind of define where we need to go, but we need talent, we need bodies. In some cases, we need money to try to bring in to move forward. So yeah, that. And culturally, right? So, don't get me wrong, we have a great many talented people who do what they do on our behalf, every day. Sometimes you need outsiders to come in to give you a different perspective, because sometimes you kind of get some blindness when you see the same thing every day. And sometimes an independent eye can help you identify things more quickly than you could perhaps do on your own. Regarding
that cultural stuff, what have you seen work? Because just about every leader I talk to, civilian or a DOD, doesn't matter, they talk about the cultural shift regarding zero trust.
Sure.
What have you seen work to help to try to deal with that challenge?
I think first and foremost, there has to be some level of buy-in, right? When you're forced to do things sometimes that you're not necessarily prepared to do, if that's the case, you may be, more reluctant or disinclined to move forward. But having this collaborative, right, coordinating with each other, talking with each other, helps everyone, not necessarily in lockstep, because again, we're moving at various levels of maturity, but it helps you appreciate that we're all in this together and we're all seeking the same outcome, which is to achieve that paradigm on the end.
Would you say those cultural issues are more difficult to deal with than the technological issues, less neutral? What's your sense of that?
I think it's hard to say, because it's all about context and perspective, right? So while there may be some who may take longer to embrace this sea change, if you will, there are a vast number of us who appreciate that this is the direction that we're going in, and we're all gonna, get on board and again move forward.
Infrastructure-wise, what have you had to do differently, or what have you had to change, alter, whatever, in order to realize the vision that you and your colleagues have for zero trust at HHS?
Yes, so again, due to our federated nature, within a particular area of the agency, they may have had to do something from that perspective that others may not have. So I can't say that from a holistic perspective, because it's predicated on that individual journey within that particular operating division.
As that plays out over time, what are the guideposts that you would like to see organizations hit within HHS, and what would you like to see the entire agency hit as you're moving through this journey to know that you're on the right track, that you're going where you want to go?
Right. So within the confines of that zero trust working group I spoke to earlier, right? So they meet at some level of periodicity to kind of, again, discern where we are, identifying again said scar tissue, etc. And then based upon that information, we can again inform how we move forward, but we can also try to characterize where we are from a start to finish perspective. And again, it can't be, I can't call it from an enterprise perspective, once again. And so it all depends on that individual space within the organization. But we can get a general sense of who may need more attention, who may need more help. And of course, as a collective, and part of the focus of that group is to try to lend assistance where we can.
You mentioned resources a moment ago, and I imagine one of the particular challenges on this list of 10 that presents itself in that area is legacy systems and infrastructure is one of the ones that you and your team have written about.
Sure.
What does that journey look like at HHS in trying to deal with legacy systems and at least, I mean, some of them I imagine you can't eliminate because delivering on the mission of some of these organizations
Right.
is critical those systems are critical to doing that.
Absolutely. And I think what that will ultimately require is perhaps a deeper look on those legacy systems, and kind of we all appreciate that at some point, appreciating that there may be limitations of a legacy system reconciled against the fact that they're needed. Some hard decisions perhaps will have to be made on what we can do with respect to those legacy systems, and perhaps place them in obsolescence at some point so that we can replace it with something that can comport with these zero trust requirements and other mandatory requirements.
Last challenge I want to ask about is user experience. It's something that has been really important in the digital transformation efforts that every agency is undertaking. How are you approaching the user experience concept at HHS, Lamont?
Well, as we move forward again, we consider them, they're certainly stakeholders in this process, and we try to keep them involved and abreast of what we're doing. So mentally that they are prepared for this change when we ultimately reach that destination.
Do you have a time frame in mind, or is it as we are, whenever we're ready to go?
It's still fluid at this point. we're still moving forward with this journey. I wouldn't want to put a timeline on it, but do know that we're moving as quickly as we can in a judicious way, right? So that when we get there, we know that we've done everything that needed to be done.
Lamont, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
You can read more about HHS's Zero Trust journey on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in a moment. Dive deep into the latest advancements in maritime technology and defense. Watch Innovation in Government from Sea Air Space, available now on demand. You'll get exclusive insights from leaders at the Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard as they discuss breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and digital innovations. Don't miss this unique perspective on the future of maritime defense and technology. Watch anytime you want on the FedGov Today YouTube channel and at fedgovtoday.com, sponsored by Carasoft. Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, one of the biggest government industry collaborations of the year is coming May 19th through 21st. ACT-IAC will host the Emerging Technology and Innovation Conference at the Hyatt Regency Chesapeake Bay in Cambridge, Maryland. The agenda's already loaded with government superstars. You can read more about the lineup and register at fedgovtoday.com/events. The FedGov Today podcast this week features my exclusive conversation with the Comptroller General of the United States, Gene Dodaro, as he celebrates his 50th year in government at the Government Accountability Office. You can listen and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts, and it's always available on demand at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.